Lifeline.
While you do that, Anna, do you want to send?
Awesome.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no problem. So as I was saying, thank you everyone so much for being here and for registering for the Waves of Change camp. I just want to go super quickly over what we're going to do in this Waves of Change camp. As I was saying, it's going to be divided into 3 phases. And we want the objective of phase 1 to be raising awareness about what's happening and having workshops and dialogues with experts. This will take 3 different sessions where we will speak about different issues. And then we will start our capacity building workshops in June, where we will have 4 capacity building workshops with experts on different subjects. And finally, in phase 3 will be the execution phase. So if you have any projects or any solutions that you have either in mind or that you're executing, we would like you to present your solution and present your project, and that way we can see how the POP movement and the Urbis Foundation can help you and help your project be successful and grow. So before we, let's see if Dr. Christine's audio is good enough. Okay, perfect. So just super quickly before we present our speaker for the day, we just wanted to conduct a really fast series of introductions. So if everyone, we could go around and say our name, our age, where we're from, and our interests, it'd be awesome. So Paola, would you be able to start?
Sorry. So my name is Paola. I am 22 years old. I'm from Mexico, specifically from Mexico City. I'm a biology student, so I'm really, my passion has always been life itself. But recently I've developed a really big passion for the ocean, especially because I took a class in marine ecology. And right now I'm specializing in ocean acidification. I did a research project last semester, which just made me realize how big of a problem ocean acidification is. And it just made me want to involve myself even more in this big issue. But I'm really glad this decade was named the Decade of Marine Ocean Sciences. And I'm really interested in just contributing in any way that I can. So I'm really glad to be here.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here with us today. We're very excited to have you here, and it's so good to hear that you're so interested in the ocean. Now, Hasik, could you introduce yourself, please?
Maybe Salma wants to go.
Okay, or Salma, if you're available.
So, hi everybody, do you hear me?
You can introduce yourself. Yes, we can hear you.
Okay, my name is Alma Macias. I am also from Mexico, from Mexico City, but I am living now in La Paz, in Baja California Sur. I am also a marine biologist. Well, now I'm working in my underbachelor thesis and social service in CONAM. My favorite animals, as you can see, are whales. And I am very excited about this workshop and the Waves of Change initiatives. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Salma. So Priyanka, Dr. Ash, Norma, or Hasik, if anyone wants to introduce themselves.
Sure. Hazik, can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Sorry, I disconnected for a moment. Yeah. So hi, my name is Hazik Razi. I am the co-founder of the Urbis Foundation. Oh, sorry, I can't switch on my video. I have bad internet. So, so I'm 14 years old and I study in India. Right now I'm in Dubai. And I'm also pretty excited to be here. So yeah, I hope all of you have a wonderful time. So yeah.
Thanks. Great. I think we lost Zoe there. She was I think trying to type, but maybe we'll have her come back. In the meanwhile, I'm happy to say my name is Ash, and I'm with the pop movement, and I'm really happy to be part of this really important discussion. And I totally agree with everyone here that the health of our oceans are key to the health of to human health and health of the planet and every other species. So this is crucial. And I just want to say thank you for having me, and thank you for being here.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ash. Dr. Norma and Priyanka.
Yeah, hi, good morning. My name is Norma. I am a pub mentor, a biologist from IPN in Mexico, working on marine science and devoted to the ocean also. Thank you so much for your presence here.
Thank you, Dr. Norma. Hello, everyone. My name is Priyanka. I am 24 years old. I am currently situated in Bangalore, India, and I work as a program director for Elvis Foundation, where I work very closely with the youth to educate them about the ocean issue and plastic pollution. And I'm so excited to be here and to have Dr. Christine and everyone else join us today for the very first session of the Waves of Change Camp. So thank you so much.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Priyanka. And well, finally, my name is Ana Hanhausen. I'm 24 years old, and I'm also from Mexico City, as the same as Alma and Paula. And I've been really interested in the ocean for about 3 years now. I just find them so interesting and so exciting to learn more about them. So without further ado, I'll pass on to Priyanka, who will introduce our speaker for the day.
Thank you so much, Anna. So I'm very excited to introduce the very first guest speaker for the Waves of Change Camp. Dr. Christine is a marine conservation biologist and an ocean advocate who is passionate about conserving sea turtles, fighting plastic pollution, and empowering women in STEM. For over 15 years, Dr. Christine has applied her research globally to the conservation of sea turtles. She was thrust into the international spotlight in 2015 when she captured her research team in Costa Rica removing a plastic straw from a sea turtle's nose on film. The video quickly went viral and was a leading catalyst for the global anti-straw movement. As a result, global businesses, including Starbucks, Alaska Airlines, and Disney, removed plastic straws from their product offerings. In 2018, she was named the Next Generation Leader by Time magazine, and her outreach work was a finalist for Texan of the Year. Her work and research has been featured in documentaries, TV shows, public press articles, and podcasts, including on BBC, National Geographic, and others. She's the Director of Science and Education for Footprint Foundation, where she inspires each one of us to help eliminate plastic from the environment and food chain by making everyday changes. She's still actively involved in sea turtle conservation through her Costa Rican nonprofit Coasts. Over to you, Dr. Christine. Thank you so much for joining us, and we are eagerly looking forward to the session with you today.
And a warm welcome.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me, and saludos de Costa Rica. So for my Latinos here that also had to get up early, I think. Yeah, so I'm trying to share my screen right now, and I hope it's going to work. And I'm apologizing already in advance if anything happens to my internet, but Costa Rica usually comes with certain disadvantage on the communication side. So can you see my screen?
Yes.
Awesome. Yay. Yeah, so I guess I'm actually having the honor to kick off the ocean literacy part of the Waves of Change initiative, which we titled Ocean Health and Threats, because I think this is such an important part to know about in order to even think about where do we put our levers and what needs to be done in order to do better, right, as human beings. And I have to say, I, of course, will mainly speak from a perspective as an eyewitness of stuff that I've seen in the past 15 years, mainly through the eyes of my research and conservation because of my sea turtles. So this is called the presentation I'm going to give. And yeah, I'm usually, kind of hanging out in the jungle most of the time, very disconnected from the world with my sea turtles. Have done that for many, many years before I even, was really in the international spotlight. And interestingly, one event in 2015, what Priyanka already mentioned, thrust me in the spotlight, where I found one of those turtles that had something funny encrusted in its nose, and it turned out to be a plastic straw. And that was the moment where, you know, I kind of moved from just being a scientist and conservationist to also becoming a activist, maybe accidentally, I don't know. At least I really discovered the power of social media and internet, because, you know, here in the jungle, I don't have access to a lot of people. It's not like hundreds of people marching through my base camp here, but because of the internet, like just right now, I can literally connect with the entire world, speaking to people in Mexico, speaking to people in India all at once, and that's incredibly powerful. But yeah, my general days look more like that nowadays. So I work with leatherback turtles in the Caribbean of Costa Rica, where we relocate eggs, trying to protect them from poachers. So with the same with the females. And I do a lot of other research as well, because I am a scientist and I am very heavy on the data side. So I have all my conservation efforts are based on scientific facts. I mean, that's just how it is. Science is not a religion. Science is like, you know, and no matter how much I want a story to be true as a scientist, the data is in the end that will tell the story. And so, for example, I do satellite tracking to see where my turtles are going to between nesting seasons. I do stable isotope analysis to find out what they're eating, because the ocean is very vast and it's very difficult to really see what's going on there if you don't have some kind of, you know, technology tricks up your sleeves that help you to study animals that otherwise are very, very far traveling and also very elusive. So I'm actually going to skip. Well, maybe I'm going to show you. So, well, now I think I'm going to skip that one. So this is my love. This is my why. I'm an activist. I love my sea turtles. And of course, I love the ocean. I've always loved the ocean. And I mean, there's a debate actually going on if we're going to rename World Oceans Day into World Ocean Day. I don't know if you follow that. But the thing is, though, there is, of course, different oceans that we have named. But if you can see, you know, they're all pretty much connected. So it's one large ocean that we are talking about most of the time. So it's not if something happens in the Atlantic, the Pacific will by all means not be affected at all, and so on. So yeah, the debate goes towards one ocean. When we look at our oceans, the oceans are a lifeline. You guys mentioned earlier, you know, Sylvia Earle, she always talks about that, you know, without blue, there is no green. I love that statement. That is actually, you know, by Dr. Sylvia Earle. Why is that? Because, you know, the ocean covers 71% of the Earth's surface. So that means we are a blue planet, right? We have more water than anything else. And what a lot of people don't know, it doesn't matter where you live on planet Earth, you are intimately connected to the ocean, at least through the oxygen you breathe. We always talk about the rainforest. There's so much stuff going on for the rainforest. But in fact, 50 to 80% of the oxygen that we breathe is generated in the ocean. So through, you know, algae that swims in the ocean, but also coral reefs, you know, that provide, it's almost like coral reefs are the, you know, the ocean rainforest, if you want so. And right now, when we talk about climate change, the oceans are also large carbon sinks. So without the ocean, probably our situation with all the emission that we have created in the past decades, we would be in a way more dire situation than we actually right now. I mean, even whales are incredibly, I always forget the exact number, but I don't know if it's like one gray whale, it's like 55 tons of carbon that it can sequester. So it's insane. I mean, it's just an incredible carbon sink that protects us from ourselves pretty much. And then another thing is, of course, you know, again, it doesn't matter if you yourself might not be living close to the ocean, but fish provides the main protein sources for many, many, many people that depend on the ocean, and on a healthy ocean. That is really important, because either they are, you know, completely depending on fishing for livelihood, and also then, of course, for food, or just because, you know, there's a lot of people that need to be fed and that buy foods, fish as a food. So the problem though is our oceans are under, well, very dire threat. We talk a lot of times in conservation biology about apocalyptical riders. So whoever is not, you know, is not of Jewish or Christian religion, it's like the biblical riders that come and destroy everything. It doesn't really matter. It's just supposed to be looking scary. So mainly we're talking about climate change, we talk about over-exploitation, we talk about fishing, and we talk about different forms of pollution. including also invasive species that have become a major threat to different ecosystems. And when you look at it, it is a very complex situation. And you probably have seen the documentary Seaspiracy. And while I agree with like the general notion, industrial fisheries is a threat, but the movie, what it lacks a little bit to really talk about all the different things that are happening and that are creating these incredible, horrible synergies, right? Because even if we would stop fishing, for the next decades, if we don't stop the way how we live on land, how we produce our foods, if we stop fertilizer runoffs, we need to stop carbon emission, our oceans will still die. And that is a fact. So I hope Seaspiracy, if you watched it, is just the beginning of you getting interested in ocean conservation and the threats they're facing. And, it kind of motivated you to dig a little bit deeper. And the thing is, working with sea turtles, I've come to realize that sea turtles are actually a perfect sentinel of ocean health, right? A sentinel is somebody that is kind of stays guard, keeps watch, but also is almost working as like a reflection of what's going on, like an indicator. And just over the past decades, we have come to know that, for example, climate change is hugely impacting sea turtle population. So climate change, what it does in general to our ocean, it raises temperatures globally, of course, but it also raises sea surface temperatures. So that means there is a paradigm shift, especially in a turtle that is ectotherm. So that means they cannot produce their own metabolic heat, and they are depending on certain temperatures to live. So that means they can't just like venture to the North Pole or whatever. So they have to stay in certain temperature regimes, as we would say as biologists. And since the temperatures are heating up, we can see sea turtles venturing farther north and farther south than previously. But that, of course, leads to problems because, for example, as we had in Texas just a few months ago, there was a sudden cold snap that happens also a lot of times on the east coast of the US. And all of a sudden, we have thousands of cold stunned turtles, likely because they didn't really know that, even though the temperatures were great for a while, that this could also happen. The other problem is that we have with climate change is that sea levels are rising. So that means we are losing habitats, especially in a species such as the sea turtle that doesn't just live in the ocean, but they need also beach habitat to lay their eggs, to incubate their eggs. And we have massive problems with erosion all along. There's actually countries in this world that will be lost to the sea entirely. So the Netherlands, I think, is one of the textbook examples. But here in Costa Rica, it is incredible. I mean, I'm working right now on the same beach that I started 14 years ago. And I can see that we've lost already about 50 to 60 meters horizontally to the ocean, because there's this like illegal house that was constructed. And I can see like there used to be a huge kind of front yard, a path, some forest, and the ocean. And now the ocean literally goes all the way to the doorstep. So that's as much beach as we have already lost. And we are even throughout the season have massive problems with erosion and stuff like that. And that is, of course, not just, I'm always trying to remember, I'm telling it through the eyes of a sea turtle, but that doesn't just apply to sea turtles, of course. The other problem is in sea turtles is that sea turtles throughout their incubation temperature will decide, or the incubation temperature will decide if the turtle will become female or male. Colder temperatures usually lead to more males, hotter temperatures to more females. So if you want to have like a catchphrase, it's cool dudes and hot chicks, or hot chicks and cool dudes. And the problem is that we're producing way more females than we're producing males, which is, of course, we're talking with sea turtles of endangered species. So that means their population size is already really small. And that means we need, a good genetic pool to produce the next generation. So they are adaptable to all the changes that are happening in the environment. And there is statistics right now that we're producing between 9 to 14 females per one male, in certain populations. So that means even though they have a really long generation time, it might not affect tomorrow, but not up until 25 years, but there might be not enough males around once, in a few years that can fertilize our females. The other problem that we have, as in many other ocean species as well, is the over-exploitation. So sea turtles, in that case, are hunted for their eggs and their meat and their shell. And of course, human consumption in that sense have really brought those species to the brink of extinction. But again, it's not just sea turtles, right? If we're looking at whaling, just a few hundred years back, that have done the same thing for oil, or shark finning nowadays, that is also threatening shark populations. So there's always this aspect of exploitation of ocean organisms and products that come from the ocean. I don't know if you know or familiar with the red corals in the Mediterranean. They have been, extensively harvested for many, many years, so that they're now threatened. Sponges, natural sponges, same thing in the Mediterranean, because people like to use them for their shower. So overexploitation is huge. And then, of course, the big thing, Seaspiracy already mentioned, is industrial fishery. And I want to make it very clear, we're talking here about industrial fishery, so commercial fishery in the sense of like massive fleets that just go into an area and fish literally everything without looking at, maximum sustainable yields, as we would like talk about. Because if you look at, how a population reproduces, there's always a certain amount that you can take away that would leave enough adults that are able to create more babies, and that way are able to kind of produce the next generation. But there's a lot of problems with poor countries, especially developing countries. Costa Rica is one of the best examples as well. I know what it looks like in Mexico, but we have sold our fishing rights to different countries in the world, so they can just come here and fish as they want. And of course, we don't have a lot of say of what's happening. But the industrial fishery doesn't only threaten, marine life, but it also threatens livelihoods, because our artisanal fishermen that are here in Costa Rica are also noticing, of course, that their fish are getting less and less, and that means their livelihood is pretty much endangered as well. And the problem with a lot of marine wildlife is that, first of all, the gear that is used to capture fish doesn't always just capture fish, but a lot of times it captures also non-targeted species, what we call bycatch. It can be sea turtles, it can be other fish species, it can be sharks, it can be marine mammals, even seabirds. And so a lot of animals, actually probably in the millions, die every year in fishing gear as non-targeted species. And then the other dimension to it is that fishing gear, unfortunately, a lot of times gets lost at sea, either because it ripped and somebody didn't want to take it back to shore, or a storm just kind of made it loose. So we have these massive amounts of ghost gear that is floating around. And this is really kind of a death trap, which entangles everything and anything that just comes close to it. So it doesn't matter if you're a large blue whale or if you're a tiny sea turtle, you die, especially if you're air breathing. But even sharks need to swim in order to oxygenate their gills. So it's just a death trap. Fisheries is really, really bad. And then the other biggie is ocean pollution, of course. So there's different subsets of pollution. So we have light pollution, we have oil spills, we have toxins, which include fertilizers and heavy metals as well. And of course, the big one, plastic pollution, or at least big one for me, because I'm so active in it. So light pollution for species such as sea turtles that need to navigate to the ocean and usually use the brightest spot on the horizon. It means that if you have a house, if you have a hotel, if you have street lights or whatever on or close to the ocean, you might actually deorient the babies and the moms, and they will crawl inland, get run over by cars and other stuff. So that's a huge thing, especially in the developed world. If we talk about like the coast of Spain, for example, or the coast of the eastern US. And then the other thing, of course, big oil is an issue. I think we don't even need to start with it, but it's, of course, of the fossil fuels that we're burning, it's a problem because of the plastic it helps create, but it is also a problem because the crude oil can actually cause absolutely devastating harm in our oceans. So I think the last really big one that actually people talked about and wasn't hushed over, because I think there is way more oil spills than we know about, because a lot of times it will be kept really quiet. But this happened in the Gulf of Mexico, the Deepwater Horizon spill in 2010 that pretty much wreaked havoc on an ecosystem. And because it was in the US, BP was actually forced to make reparation payments. And it was millions of dollars that now go into the restoration of the ecosystem. But of course, it can bring back everything that has already been killed. But so we had all kinds of animals, not just sea turtles, that were covered in oil that died of the oil spill. And the other thing is, and again, you know, I always think it's so curious, again, when we think about sentinels, it might not be even pollution that you see. I always think it's so funny when people go to vacation and they see what they consider dirty water just because it's murky, you know, there has been sedimentation, it doesn't look, the visibility isn't great, but the water quality is actually great. And then they go into clear waters because there's rocky coast and they have no idea that it's totally polluted by E. coli because people have been dumping their sewage waters, or because of pesticides and forever chemicals that have been making their way into the water. But that said signs that something is wrong if you see things like the sea turtle, for example. So in sea turtles, it's kind of a cancer which is caused by a virus which is very similar to the human papilloma virus. It's called Vibro Papilloma. And it is a retrovirus, so very similar to like herpes as well. It kind of hides in your DNA, and if your immune system is compromised, it starts to manifest itself. So the first time that we actually saw this was in the early 19s in Hawaii, when the pineapple production was really, really big. And a lot of, you know, fertilizers, pesticides and stuff made their way into the water. And we had this absolutely incredible endemic amongst green sea turtles that had these absolutely horrible, large cancerous tumors all over the soft tissues. And when you cut them open, also around the organs. And now you can see that if you go to waters and you have sea turtles that actually show those tumors, it's usually immediately connected with some kind of water pollution that you might not be able to see otherwise. So Texas just recently started to get a lot of turtles with Vibro Papilloma. It is likely due to the farming practices, and of course the rivers that take out all the pesticides and fertilizer into the water. But even here in Costa Rica, I've also worked with marine mammals. So we have this one river which is heavily polluted by sewage, by human sewage. And the dolphins that, you know, because bottlenose dolphins also tend to kind of stay kind of faithful to an area to forage. And there's this one this one pod that is always foraging in this one particular river mouth. And over the past 10 years, they have developed these absolutely horrible skin lesions and skin fungi that we're not entirely sure where they're from. But it's interesting that it's exactly the river that is already known to have really bad water quality. So, you know, again, an indication of what's going on. And then pollution, it's very overwhelming a lot of times. There's a lot of statistics, none of them are super accurate because our oceans are so big of like how much there actually might be in our ocean. I mean, there's stats like there will be more plastic than fish by weight in our oceans by 2050, even though kind of people are like, I don't know if that's true. Problem is also a lot of the plastic doesn't float. So if you don't have a water bottle with air, it actually sinks. And which is really, 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 really sad is it doesn't matter nowadays. If you're going to the remotest place on Earth, if you go to the highest mountain, to the deepest trenches in the ocean, you will find plastic. It's such an such a ubiquitous material. It was of course great when it was invented. It has helped us to you know make massive advances in technology, in medicine, science. Of course, I mean, I'm a scientist. I'm using plastic, but we are having this disease where we overuse plastic. So we have created this material that lasts forever. But we're using it for things like, you know, a moment of pleasure, of convenience, a straw, a plastic water bottle, and yeah, it stays on our planet for hundreds of years. And the effects that we have because of that are absolutely incredible. So in the case of sea turtles, again, we have an estimate that, first of all, of the 7 species that we have, every single one has been documented to have ingested plastic already. Entanglement is also an issue. When they eat plastic, it can perforate their stomach, it can clog their stomach. And even if it's not something so direct, the toxins that accumulate on plastics, a lot of times DDTs, PFAS, and other horrible forever chemicals do alter hormone stuff and other things. And can like shorten life expectancies and also the health of an animal. So there was an estimation that just with 14 pieces of plastic, I think it was, the lifespan of a sea turtle can be reduced. And we have estimations that right now, with all the sea turtles that we have swimming in our oceans, about 80% are affected by plastic. And interesting is that the earliest records of plastic ingestions are coming from sea turtles as well. So in the early 1980s, that was the first account of leatherback turtles actually having eaten plastic, having had plastic. And a more recent study looked back at really old records from like I think the 50s, 60s, 70s, where people were not even really aware of the plastic might be an issue. But if anybody that did a necropsy of a turtle noted maybe something, and they found records already of leatherbacks having eaten plastic as early as the 60s and 70s. So a massive problem. Just as like other objects that can be lodged into the nose. And again, it will take a very, 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 very long time before all of that is gone. Unfortunately, also, of course, the big polluters, we're always told it's us, right, as consumers. But of course, a lot of times it's the companies that are producing actually probably the majority of things. They're trying to push the narrative, oh, we need to recycle, even though they know already for decades that recycling is not really the solution. So only about 9% of plastics is getting recycled. And that is probably a very generous number. In the US, it's more like 4% than 9%. Yeah, so that leaves us all very depressed, I think. And of course, I don't want you to leave with that. But what can we do, right? I mean, it seems to be so many things are happening in our ocean. What can we all do to help? And of course, climate change is a big one. It will be, I mean, we are still busy with the pandemic, but we need to address this problem as quickly as possible and as radically as possible. And that means we need to reduce our emissions by a lot in order to prevent, we can't even, like people always ask me, how can I reverse it? It's not about reversing it. It means kind of more like damage control, that we're not all dying in the next 10 or 20, 40, 50 years. So of course, a lot of times, people don't want to do a lot, but actually, if you want to do, something really effective, and maybe also you don't have the means to do everything perfectly, because what I really hate and what sometimes holds back the environmental movement is these few people that are very privileged, that have all the money in the world to buy whatever they need, kind of looking down on people that are trying, but are maybe not doing it perfectly. So I always say, hey, do whatever you can. But for example, look at your diet. Can you reduce any type of animal protein, of animal product, particularly red meat, right? That means beef, pork, and dairy, because dairy, of course, comes from cows of the times as well. And just try. I mean, don't do it every day. Don't become vegan necessarily, but try by 50%. Like just do half of your meals and see how that goes, and convince as many people as possible to do the same. Try really hard to travel less. I mean, airplanes are, definitely emitting a lot of emission. Rather use public transportation than your own car, or even go by bike, even better. And what I found really scary, maybe 2 days ago, I read an article about how everybody expected our emissions to go down by so much in the past year because of the pandemic, and it actually didn't really. And a lot of the problems is our internet consumption, right? The servers that need to be powered, the energy that is used to power our servers. So it's also a lot about, how do we produce energy? So I'm in the lucky position here in Costa Rica. Actually, Costa Rica produces up to 100% of their energy from renewable resources. So it is a country that shows, hey, it's possible. And I mean, we're tiny, right? We're really tiny, tiny, tiny. We have geothermal energy, we have water energy, but I mean, there's other options. So if you have a lot of space, think about having solar panels, wind power. There's so many different ways. But the other really, really scary thing I thought was that so many people are nowadays dealing in cryptocurrencies, and mining cryptocurrencies actually generates so much emission. My mind was blown, because I'm not doing any of that. But you always think it's, that it's not connected. I mean, how can it be something that's virtual, right? It's not even really existing, creating so much damage. So there's so many things. And I just always encourage you, read up on it, read studies, think about how you can become better, how you're maybe one day, if you're having a business or working for a company, of how you can convince your company to do better. And later on, just use your profession to, you know, do good in the world. And of course, over-exploitation, I think that's almost an easy fix. It's just like, don't support anybody that is selling anything that comes from animals that are protected. So don't go and buy sea turtle eggs. Don't go out when you're on vacation and buy sea turtle meats. For Christmas, don't buy any jewelry that is made from hawksbill shell. Don't go to China and eat shark fin soup, all of those things. So just be very, very conscious about, you know, what you're buying and where it comes from. And then fisheries, yeah, of course. I mean, Sea Legacy wants us all to be not eating fish anymore, but I think that is not an option for many, many people. So I think rather think local, so know where your fish is coming from. Like literally the best thing would, even if you know the fisherman yourself. So the only times I'm eating fish, and that I have done that for years that way, is that when either we are going out ourselves. I mean, I'm not a big fisher, but my husband is. So if he brings back fish, I know he caught it. I know how he caught it, so I don't have an issue with that. Or if my artisanal fishermen that I'm working with because of my sea turtle programs went out and fished, and I know what gears they use, so that is where I'm getting my fish from. And I think if you have the privilege to not eating fish, then just don't do it, you know. And other than that, just really be careful of where it comes from. The other thing is, of course, the pollution in our oceans. When we talk, for example, about toxins, again, it's a lot of times diet and how you know, support businesses. If you're going for the big farming crops, if you buy out of season. So again, think local, support, you know, companies and farms that don't use any kind of pesticides. I'm always a little bit worried of certifications because, you know, it's really expensive. A lot of small farmers are not able to afford even to get the certification, and it's not always perfect in how it is enforced. So I just put it on there 100% organic, but actually I'm like, a lot of times it's just money making. So rather just like grow your own food. I mean, if you can, or get it somewhere, you know, that you know where it comes from. That's like the best option. And of course, always, that's the big thing. If you have politicians that support, you know, a Green New Deal, or that, you know, support better farming practices, that want to get rid of certain subsidies for farmers, that, I mean, at least in the US, I know, and in Germany, there's a lot of stuff that is subsidized that is already known to be harmful. So why the hell do you keep on supporting that? Don't do that. So that means a lot of times becoming politically active. Just go out and vote. I mean, that is the first step of being politically active, right? Vote for the representatives that will do the right things. And then lastly, plastic pollution, you know, try to reduce your plastic as much as possible. I don't even want to go down and say, hey, you know, reduce, reuse, recycle. Yeah, don't. Just try to use as little plastic as possible, and try to convince as many people as possible, let it be your local supermarket or your favorite restaurant, to do better in what they offer as packaging and other stuff. And again, like, just try to support businesses that do a good job, and boycott businesses that don't do so well, and support legislation, of course, every single time that will maybe put a hold onto certain plastic products. So in the EU, luckily, there is a big movement right now against plastic, which even the big polluters are like, okay, if we want to keep on selling here, we need to change our practices. So they have to look for different solutions to packaging. I mean, packaging makes up about 1/3 of all plastic, of the whole plastic waste that is created. So that means, you know, of course, we're all going out, we need to eat. Not everybody has a farm, so we go to the supermarket and buy food and packaging. And so that is super important to think about. Yeah, this is my presentation. So I'm always saying, you know, whatever your why is, protect what you love. In my case, it's the sea turtles. And I don't know, I hope we're having a good discussion now.
Thank you, Dr. Christine. This was an incredible presentation. I learned a lot, and I even took some notes of everything you were saying. Everything was really, really interesting and insightful. So to all the participants we have here, what we want to do now is open up the floor for questions and discussions. So if anyone would like to ask Dr. Christine anything, or ask her to share her experience on anything specific, it would be great. You can either open up your microphone and ask a question, or raise your hand and put through the chat, whatever you prefer.
Sure, I'm happy to get us started. Thank you. First off, I'd like to say, Dr. Christine, thank you once again for an extremely enlightening and inspirational talk and presentation. And this has truly been an honor. I would love to hear your story in terms of, how you became involved in the work, the incredible work that you're doing, and also how you, what took you to where you are right now in terms of being in Costa Rica. And I'm wondering what, were there any key sort of milestones in this process that you'd like to share with us that might also serve as guidance to some of the young people we have in the room who certainly want to be able to pursue careers in this field, both in terms of practice as well as perhaps science and research? Thank you.
Yeah, no problem. I actually had it in the slideshow, and then I said, well, it's not really about ocean health, so I kind of took it out. Yeah, so I'm from Germany, as you might be able to tell from my accent. I'm not Costa Rican, not a US American. And I grew up in a very landlocked town, actually really ugly town, I would say, known for coal mining. If you look at it, it's just like a bunch of, I don't even, those towers that pull up, I don't even know what the English term is for it, but pull up the coal. So it wasn't very green. It wasn't very, nature outdoorsy at that time. Actually, it has become a lot nicer now that the coal mines have closed and there's a lot of efforts, regreening everything. But back in the days, it wasn't. And luckily, my parents, they were big ocean lovers, and Europe is very small compared to India or probably even Mexico. So that means, and Germany has borders with 9 other countries. So the only country that has more borders is China, which is a lot bigger than we are. So that means it's really easy to travel. We have 2 coastlines in Germany, in the north, so northern North Sea and Baltic Sea. But for us, where I lived, it was actually a lot closer to go to France sometimes, or to even the Netherlands to go to the ocean. And yeah, so we would vacation there a lot of times, just like for the weekends or longer. And actually my very first big vacation was in Greece. I was like 2 or 3 years old. I know that because my mom is German, and Germans are a little bit stingy with money. So she could always remember I was still able to fly for free. And I remember that in the water, it was, I was really scared to go into the water because the water was clear enough that I could see there was like something swimming around. I was freaked out. And my dad is like this very matter-of-fact German engineer, and he got really tired of my temper tantrums of not going in the water. So he would walk up to like the concession stands and would just buy me a pair of goggles and say, okay, put that on, and you see there is nothing to be scared of, and now, stop whatever you're doing. So after that, I got really fascinated, just like looking at everything, and thought that was like the coolest thing. From that was just really gradual, interest of the ocean, probably very fostered by my dad, me documentaries of Hans and Hans to have, well, actually, I think she's dead as well, but he had a very pretty wife that always was the protagonist of his film, Lotte. And so I had early on like this role model of somebody that was like diving in the ocean, and it was really, really neat. And so I know that friends still tell me, they were like, man, even in kindergarten, you would say you would become like an ocean explorer. Hey, Fiona. Sorry, my dog. An ocean explorer or a marine biologist. And so I think ever since I knew that, everything kind of, I knew what I needed to do in order to do this, right? So in Germany, we, for example, back then I knew that you had to have Latin to study sciences. And so when I had to choose my second language after English, it could be either French or Latin. I took Latin. I was really sucky. I hated it. And then by the time I graduated, it was not even a requirement anymore. But I had like 7 years of Latin. Oh, yeah. So I rather had French at this point. But well, OK, there it is, Latin. But when I was 13, I also started to intern in a local aquarium with marine mammals and yeah, sea lions, dolphins, and all of that. I know it's it's a big debate. But for me, it was like the closest I could get to the ocean and animals such as in my little landlocked area. And it was awesome because I met so many biologists there as well that, you know, were doing studies. They also had a big program in actually South America. It's called Yacupacha, where they were supporting in situ projects as well. So I had so much, you know, input already at like 13, 14 of like what it is really like to be a marine scientist, of people that were telling me that were studying of what it is like. And so I stayed there up until I was about, graduating high school, but in between also, because I was working there, I knew already, okay, English is like the language that science operates on. So any article, textbook is in English. So I knew, okay, I really need to kind of crack down on my English. I need to get fluent so I don't have to struggle with that aspect later on, because I mean, the material itself is already heavy enough. And so I went for an exchange. I got, so I'm not for money, to say that. I'm like lower middle class, probably. My mom was a stay-at-home mom, and dad was an only earner. So there was never, you know, the thing that my parents were able to pay for everything. So I applied for a bunch of scholarships, and I got the scholarship to go to the US for 1 year. And yeah, so that was, you know, another thing on my checklist, that I was able to speak English afterwards. And then I just started to think about how I want to go with my grad school. And I decided I would go into the South, because in Germany you have to start with general biology. And I was like, well, then it doesn't really matter where I'm going. But I knew, okay, for my master's, I really, really, really want to go to the coast, to Hamburg, because they have this like marine mammal working group. But well, life doesn't always turn out as you wanted to. So I did my undergrads, and I was really lucky because there was a new professor that started a tropical marine ecology course, and we went to Egypt for 3 months, because after my base studies, I was so done. Like, I thought I did more math and physics and chemistry. I mean, like so much chemistry. It was just like insane. And that I was like, well, is this really what I want to do? Like, this sounds horrible. And luckily, at the very end, I went to Egypt with him for 3 months, and it was everything I ever imagined. So he made us do our own little projects, and it was actually a grad level course, but he was so new that he didn't find enough people to actually participate. And so, you know, I was able to go with one other undergrad, and it was just amazing. I mean, that was like, I think if it wouldn't have been for that course, I would have totally left biology and done something totally different, gone to the police or something. I don't know. But yeah, so I kind of kept on doing it. Then I wanted to go to Hamburg, but I studied to a time where the German system was just switching over to like the Anglistic bachelor-master system. And Hamburg did not want to have my degree anymore. And they were like, sorry, no. So I was like, okay, now I need to think about something else. And I was like, well, okay, honestly, like the basics of biology, ecology, and behavioral physiology I was really interested in are the same. You know, I mean, the basics are the same, the theory. So where I apply it later on is totally up to me. So I went to Würzburg, which is known for tropical ecology and animal physiology and animal ecology. And yeah, and it was serendipity. I was literally the first day that I was standing in front of my professor's door, trying to figure out some stuff with my classes. And while I was waiting for him, I saw this blackboard, and there was this position advertised in Costa Rica looking for research assistants, you know, studying leatherbacks. And I was like, okay, it was old. I was in April, and it was from like January, but I just wrote them, and I was like, hey, is that something that happens like every year? Was it just a one-time thing? And they're like, oh, no, it happens every year. And so I, like in April, applied for next year, and they were like, well, could you resend it in November? Like, we're not just quite ready yet to like, you know, recruit. But yeah, so I wrote back, and I got the position, and I left for half a year to Costa Rica to study or work with leatherbacks. And in Egypt, I'd seen turtles in water, but I'd never seen a nesting turtle. So the first time I saw a leatherback nesting was just like mind blowing. It was like the most incredible thing I've ever seen in my life. I mean, you're here in the middle of the jungle. I mean, literally just jungle on one side, ocean on the other, the big night sky on top of you. And you have this dinosaur that comes out of the water, right? Slowly making its way up, really heavily breathing. And it's huge. It's massive. I mean, it's just like, wow. And then it starts using its rear flippers, just like hands, you know, like this massive animal. wow. And I was just thinking that moment, it's like, okay, this is like the coolest thing. And I think this is exactly what I want to do for the rest of my life. And yeah, luckily, I guess my German work ethics have helped me a little bit to really kind of, convince people that I'm worth their while. And my boss actually right after was like, well, don't you want to come back and work for me? And I was like, hey, dude, I just started my master's, so I kind of need my thesis and whatever. So he's like, well, why don't you do it here? And so I found a professor that would, support a thesis in Costa Rica. I found my own money and another scholarship to come here. And yeah, I went another 9 months. There's a study on paternity. So I used genetics to figure out like, what the actual mating system is like in leatherbacks here. And if it has changed at all, if, for example, small population size has something to do with what we're seeing. And I literally only went back to analyze those samples in the lab, do my final exams, and then I packed everything, gave everything away, and I moved to Costa Rica full time. Yeah. So that was kind of where I ended up. And then it was just really, a blur of me working half a year on the Caribbean side. And then luckily leatherbacks nest asynchronically on the other side. So I would just move from both to both, like 6 months and 6 months. Well, and then some stuff happened. I don't want to go into it too much, but some stuff happened that, when you sometimes just kind of go with the flow, don't think about too much about 5 years, 10 years. But something happened and I was like, okay, I need to get out of here. I need to increase my impact. I sometimes felt very powerless, because you're so tucked away in the forest. I think I said that already. And it's, sometimes life is so weird. I mean, I'm a scientist and it's all data, but sometimes stuff happens where you're like, this is really weird. So I know I kind of had I had a crisis, maybe like a little, about like how what I'm doing is not enough, that I need to do more, that I need to do more. And, all I can think about was, okay, I'm a woman scientist in a country that is male dominated. I need to somehow be taken more seriously. I need to find a way of like that I can be also autonomous. So I started this pretty early on in 2010, I started a class in conservation biology where I take German-speaking students to Costa Rica from like Austria, Switzerland, and Germany, and just like give them this experience that I have, right? But with a little bit more guidance. So they work with me in my turtle project. They actually work with me also in my in dolphin project back then. And we do a lot of the theory around it, right? So like it's really hands-on, so you understand immediately why population ecology, why genetics, why do you have all those tools in conservation? And but the thing was always I could never sign up as myself because I only had a master's, right? I mean, so that meant I really thought, okay, maybe there is value to me going back to school, even though I was really like, I don't need a PhD. Like, why do I need a PhD for? And I decided, okay, no, I'm going back so I can be autonomous as a scientist and do my own thing once I have it. And that means, yeah, I just look for a professor that worked in sea turtles and also had some connection to Costa Rica, and that brought me to Texas A&M, where I got my PhD then. And again, life, what I meant. So I had all these ideas of how to increase my impact, and literally the first field season in my PhD, I'm in a boat in Costa Rica and I find that turtle with a straw lodged into its nose. So sometimes I think life answered my request a little bit differently than I expected it to, but it definitely granted me this incredible platform now that, I can reach so many people and talk to so many more people than just being on my beach doing my sea turtle work. But I try to keep that up. So in the meantime, now I have my own nonprofit that I'm working. So I have my own projects here, totally mine. Nobody's there to tell me what to do. And it just feels very good because I feel that way I can still be authentic. I'm still an eyewitness. I'm not just like going my circles talking about stuff, but I'm still out there doing stuff and see it and talk about it, right? So this is like, I still feel I'm in the middle of, while I'm also being able to advocate for exactly what I care so much about. Sorry, that was a very long version of my story here.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think there's so many things that people, I certainly speak for myself, can take away, as important lessons from your journey. Most of all, perseverance and sort of keeping your grit and commitment, and following what it is that you feel passionate to do. So I really want to thank you, and you're such an example and leader for so many to learn from and be inspired by. So thank you so much for sharing that. It really truly meant a lot. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christine. Just keeping in mind the time that we have in hand, I just want to ask if any of the participants had any questions. Salma, Hazik, Paula, Fola, Yoko, Dr. Norma, before we then move towards the end. If not, then I have one question, but before that, if anybody else does, I would prefer that the participants get a chance to ask. Yes, Paula, please.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, I just wanted to say thank you for not only the presentation, but your trajectory like really amazed me, because I think it's my life goal to study marine conservation in Costa Rica. So I don't know, it just fascinated me. So I'm really hoping that when I finish my undergraduate degree, I can go to Costa Rica to study also marine turtles. So just thank you for that. But I was also, my question is, I was wondering, because Costa Rica has such a focus on renewable energies and just achieving the 2030 goals, I was just wondering if ecotourism plays a big role in Costa Rica, and if it has a big impact on raising awareness and just preserving the ocean.
Yeah, I mean, Costa Rica definitely uses its eco-image for their tourism. I sometimes get, of course, I think we're becoming nitpicky here around here, because of course it's not perfect. I mean, there's a lot of greenwashing that's going on, and it's I would like, actually right now, what I really like is the national parks. You can't bring plastic into it anymore. Peru actually started with that first, I think, but now Costa Rica also followed suit. But I'm not even sure if this is really, enforced, because just because there's a law doesn't mean that it's necessarily also happening, right? If there's nobody that enforces it. But I have recently traveled to Colombia, and like last year, actually, right when the pandemic hit, I got stuck in Colombia, and I was just absolutely flabbergasted of how, hi Paula, how much plastic there is. I mean, I'm getting annoyed here in Costa Rica, but it's just, Colombia it looked like a dumpster. I mean, there were certain parts in the Caribbean on the street where you would have to wade through like literally knee-high plastic. And we went to a very remote place in the desert, Punta Gallinas, which is like the most northern part. So if you look it up in the map, it's kind of a weird geography. And there's literally just indigenous tribes that live there, and the tourists that come through, and they have cacti desert. And I mean, they look like covered in lametta, like, the stuff for Christmas, of plastic bags. The wind like blows them all out, and it's just so everywhere that I'm just thinking, okay, I think Costa Rica does something a little bit better than other countries. Also, I think our rivers are not as polluted, but it isn't perfect neither. So I don't want to discourage anybody that's just on the beginning of, but it can be done. I mean, really, even in a Latin American country that is maybe not as structured as maybe Western countries, it can be done. Especially if there's a lot of people that are active in trying to change certain things, because sometimes you don't even need the government. If you, as for example, the tourism board, you decide that there are certain certifications and other stuff to give to your certified companies and hotels and whatever, and that can be an incentive, even though the government doesn't really care. It's like, okay, but if you want to be like tourism board certified, you're gonna do something. It is, so it's yes and a no, I would say. So compared to other countries, I would say it is definitely doing better. Sorry, was there a second question? Oh, Paula, what I wanted to mention though, I have scholarships for Latin American early career scientists that come and work as research assistants in my project. So if you want to check out our website, I would say I can probably put that in the comments. So for next year or else, I hope we're still being able to do what we're doing. So I'm going to put it right there. Okay, any other questions?
I think if it's all right with you, Dr. Christine, we extend a bit over time. I think there are a few questions in the chat, and also Willie has his hand raised. If it's all right, Willie, would you want to go ahead?
Yeah, no problem.
Thank you, Dr. Christine.
Billy, did you want to ask a question? Your hand's up.
Do you mean me?
Yes, Billy.
Wow, thank you very much for the valuable and insightful presentation that we just got there. Actually, I heard and Madam was talking about there that she used to go to a remote area and she collaborates with the indigenous of that place to collect plastics. I wish to know how the collaboration is done. How do she collaborate with the indigenous of that locality so much that they give her plastic that she actually recycles in return? How is it done? I wish to know how it's done. And I equally wish to say that when she speaks, she's so fast, so much that it's a kind of difficult for us to actually hear her out. If she can go a bit gradually, it will be great. It will be wow. So I pray with her to actually go gradually so much that we understand. And equally, I wish to congratulate her. I wish to really actually say thank you for the valuable and insightful presentation she did. Thank you.
What's that question now?
I was saying that the question is actually, you have been dealing with indigenes of localities, and you collect plastics. I think you talk about garbage, plastics, and all this. Like, how have you been collaborating with them so much that they give you those plastics? How has been the collaboration? I wish to know, because here back in Cameroon we are facing the same issue. It's a kind of difficult for us to actually collaborate with the indigenes, with the population. That is at the ground level, ground zero. It's actually difficult for us. How do you cope there so much that we can learn from your experience? Thank you very much. I don't know if I get what I said. Is it clear?
Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think my luck is that I am a grassroots conservation organization as well. So I do work on the grassroots level here in Costa Rica. So I'm not just working for one big foundation that's sitting in the US, but I'm actually right here in the field. And so there are a lot of times my collaborations a lot of times happen very organically. So right now we, for example, have a new, hopefully, initiative that's coming into Costa Rica, at least. If you want to look that up, it's called Ecopreneurs. It's a couple that is trying to, the problem that we really have with plastic is that it won't just disappear, right? I mean, we can't lie to ourselves. Even if we turn off the tap right now, there will still be plastics in our oceans for many, many decades to come. So that means there has to be a way of getting that plastic out and reused. And so we have to make it a commodity. So it has to be worth some money. And there's a lot of different initiatives, but one that I'm trying to get here to the grassroots, and especially here in the Southern Caribbean, which is a little bit of a forgotten region of Costa Rica, because of racism, because because of also lack of tourism and industries and stuff like that. We have banana plantations mainly, and people hate on the Caribbean. It's really racist. Actually, it's just racist, and that's the bottom line. So we also don't have waste pickup, for example. So everybody still has to burn their trash in the backyard, and they are trying to kind of use repurposed containers from shipping. And they have actually already a lab in Uganda, as far as I'm aware. So if you want to look that up, where they are getting kind of, communities involved that build the lab, and they have 3D printers, and they have people that pick up waste and bring that waste to the lab. And then you think because you become a little company, pretty much, you as a company think about products that you can make of that plastic, and that will then internationally market it. And it's a really, really neat initiative, because it's not just about the plastic, but it's also about capacity building, right? So it's about, I don't know, we're all sitting on a Zoom call right now, but I don't know if you can envision that there is a lot of people in this world that don't even know how to use a computer, that don't know how to use Word, Excel, how to write an email, and doing like a budget on Excel or whatever. So it is really picking these people up wherever they are and trying to get them on like this level where they can do and run their own business pretty much. But at the same time, with this idea, we need to get plastic out of the environment, and getting a lot of support to do that. And they have this really successful thing in Uganda, and now they want to have several ecolabs here in Costa Rica. So I'm really, really excited. But that's just one example, right? So I don't know, there's probably a lot more. I mean, there is, for example, companies that are working with local fishermen. So they pay the fishermen to bring them their fishing line, and they are doing some stuff, or like at least they recycle it. I mean, there's a lot of greenwashing as well in the, I don't know if you know, For Ocean and Planet, Peace, Love, whatever. So it's because ocean plastics is also, they're toxic. So you can't use it for every product, right? It has to be something that you don't like wear on your body, or like you use to eat from, or something like that. But there's so many cool stuff that's out there, like bicycles that are 3D printed, and you can ride on it. And especially in zones as ours, like my bike doesn't last like longer than 3 months here because of the salinity, and it just eats all the metal parts away. So having like a plastic bike would be incredible. But yeah, I don't know if it answers your question of the how, but there's so many different ways of that can actually happening. And sometimes it's really finding the right people to get together and think about, because not everything is the same, not every country, not every region. So it's kind of like, what do you have in plastic? Who might be there that is interested in that plastic? And yeah.
Yes, actually, you have answered to my question. Thank you very much. You have answered to my question. Thank you.
And I'm going to put you actually.
I have another question. Just a little question.
Into the chat right now.
Okay, hello. Hello.
Yes, Willie, we can hear you.
Okay, I had another question, a little question. I wanted to ask, because she talked about scholarships in Costa Rica, and based on recycling and all the like, handling the management of plastics and all the like. I wish to know how is the scholarship, how the scholarship function? Is it a fully funded scholarship? So much, because we have many cases here back in Cameroon. Is the scholarship open to Africans? And if it is open to Africans, is it open to Cameroonians specifically? So much that I can actually recommend some people to actually go for the scholarships and have grounded info and be vested with information that will help our community. I wish to know more about the scholarship opportunities.
Yeah,
I don't know if you can come back on that, please.
Yeah, right now it's like I'm a grassroots organization, so I don't have a lot of funds, and it's for sea turtle conservation, so it's not for the plastic aspect. And it's mainly like, so I open it up to Costa Ricans and Latin Americans, just because the traveling costs involved are not as high. I honestly would love having scholarships about, from all over the place. And actually, I think if there is people that are interested in sea turtle conservation more than anything, there's an organization that is just launching their inclusivity scholarship. And I mean, we're still raising money for it, but it's exactly this, is this idea that we can provide placements for people that are not coming from like the developed world, or from not a lot of, money, that can go and maybe do some, for the thing. So unfortunately not plastic though. So it's mainly sea turtle conservation.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Christine. So we have 2 questions in the chat. If it's all right, I'll just very quickly put it in front of you, as I know we are way over time. So one is from Salma. Salma, if you can unmute, you can ask the question, or do you want me to just go ahead? I think, and then I'll just read it out. She said that, thank you, it's very inspirational work. I was surprised by the video of the turtle with the straw. Is it common to find turtles with straws in their nostrils?
What's funny is, of course, now that we had this turtle with a straw, everybody checks the turtle's noses. And ever since then, we had a turtle, not with a straw, but with a plastic fork, and a Mexican group actually found a turtle with a plastic spoon. I don't even know how they found it, because it was still like, okay, so you have to envision there's like this connection between your mouth cavity and your nose. And so sea turtles feed underwater, right? So when they swallow their prey, they of course swallow seawater as well. And so in order to not lose the prey, they expel the seawater through their nostrils and keep the prey in their mouth before they swallow it into the stomach. And we think that, plastic items are so light, if they're swallowed with whatever they were actually trying to eat, it probably is trying to leave through the nose, but just then gets stuck. And in that case of the spoon, so I found a lollipop stick as well, but that was like, I could just pull it out like that, very anticlimactic. But it was still in the nose though, so it shows something. There is like this way of expelling water and having plastic. And this group, yeah, I mean, the part of the spoon that you put in your mouth, it was still on the roof of the mouth, and just the handle was in the nose. So they had to actually remove it through the mouth. So it's a little bit crazy, but it makes sense if you think about it. And now that we know, we're actually doing a lot more reconnaissance when we see sea turtles.
Perfect. Thank you, Dr. Christine. And one last question. Have you worked at an international level where you address a problem in Costa Rica and work together with developed countries and international NGOs?
Sorry, what was the question?
Have you worked at an international level where you address a problem in Costa Rica and work together with developed countries and international NGOs?
Well, I mean, most of my work is it national or international, right? So we have international NGOs that work on similar issues. We have national ones as well. And sea turtle conservation is probably my best example. So we have binational projects, for example, because our sea turtles go between two countries. So we are right at the border of Panama. So the turtles don't care that it's like one time it's Costa Rica, the other time it's Panama. So it's a binational program where we used to get funds. We didn't get funds. Now it's just by name that we're a binational program, but we at least share data so that we know, okay, our turtles that we didn't catch, our Panamanian neighbors saw, for example, on their beach. And yeah, in the sense of the ecopreneurs, for example, that's going to be a project that is, there is a US American involved and Venezolana, so from a lady from Venezuela. And then it's probably us and Footprint Foundation. So it's, yeah, of course, I think a lot of things in conservation and the environmental movement is always, grassroots level, of course, is a lot of times where the actual work happens, the sweat and the hard physical work. And then you need people, of course, that give you funding, people that do the marketing, where, I'm usually a one-woman show for my NGO. I don't have a social media person or whatever. So that is, sometimes where other people come in, step in and help me and advertising and doing things for me. And I think all of that is collaboration, right? I just wish the environmental movement would be more collaborative still, because we're all working towards the same goal. And when you throw other people and their causes under the bus, it doesn't look good. It's a little bit pity because, there's so many issues that our oceans are facing. And just because you picked a certain aspect of it to fight for, because you don't have that much time in your life to really go for every single thing that's out there. I don't think that you need to talk down and be afraid, because people always act as if funding is a finite source. There's definitely not enough funding that goes around because people haven't yet realized of how important it is. What we're doing is not just like, oh, I like to play with sea turtles, but what we're doing is we're trying to restore our ocean, ocean health, and actually with that, our planet's health. And with that, we're trying to, pretty much make sure that our species will survive in the future. I'm never worried about planet Earth, when we talk about it, because Earth has survived other stuff and we might go extinct though. So, when people say we are not contributing anything, we don't have a product, we don't have a service, it's because they haven't really understood of what we conservationists do. But again, so there should be more funding for us, I think, and then people wouldn't be so jealous and so worried about that, one person takes away the funding over another person, because in the end, we're all trying to do the same thing or kind of accomplish the same thing.
Thank you so much, Dr. Christine, for your time. Our sincere apologies for going way over time.
Don't worry about it. Yeah, it's all good.
Thank you so much. It was so insightful for all of us, so inspirational. I just hand it over to Anna to close the session. Thank you so much once again.
Thank you so much, Priyanka, and thank you so much, Dr. Christine, for such an amazing session. I think I speak for everyone who was here when we say it was very not only insightful but also inspiring to hear about all these threats that exist, but how there's people really taking action and making effective change. So thank you so much for being here with us today, and thank you to everyone who connected and joined this session. Our next session will be on climate change and the oceans, and it will take place on May 9th. So I hope you can accompany us. I will be sharing all the information via email as well. But thank you everyone so much, and we'll keep in touch for that.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been such a pleasure. And we look forward to working together, Dr. Christine, and to making sure we join hands to support your incredible initiative. Really, it's been absolutely amazing. And we have much more to do. Together, we'll go far. Thank you. Thank you very much. Stay safe, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you so much.
Hope you all have a wonderful day.
Have a
Everyone.
Great weekend.